So you want to look for a reroll comp where you only need to 3-star that one unit. Well, look no further, because I, Xteria, got you with Katarina Reroll. In this video, we'll cover the strongest items, strongest units, and strongest augments. For our main carry, Katarina, her best in slot is to have a fairy item, because when you play fairy, you get a free item, so that's a +1. Her best healing item would be Hodge, because it actually goes well with Jewel Gauntlet, because Jewel Gauntlet, the more crit you have, the more consistent your crits will be, and Hodge also gets crit. The reason why this item is probably better than Death Cap for her is because if one of the knives crit for the duration of her ability, the rest of it crit. And then her best alternative items is if you can't build a Hodge, Bloodthirster is okay, and then since she's AP, having the Onyx Spark will help her reduce magic resist so she can do a little bit more damage, and I won't recommend this in the augment page, but if you do get the Onyx Spark augment, it's pretty good on her too. Or if you can't build a Jewel Gauntlet, Death Cap is also fine as well. For her Ornn artifacts, the best one you can pick up would be Zonia's. This item allows her to be invulnerable for a couple seconds, and it gives her good stats. Speaking of stats, Secret Arm Guard is also a pretty good one, and she gets kills. During that battle, she will gain a lot more stats. And Blight and Jewel is okay overall for Katarina because she is a consistent damage user, and this item is really good for consistent users such as Karma as well. So it's pretty decent on Katarina overall. Your secondary carry could be almost anyone, but consistently it will be like Fiora. And the main reason why is because if you get 80 items, you can easily throw it on her because there's no really good other 80 units besides Nyla. And speaking of Nyla, both Fiora and Nyla kind of use the same items, but I'm just going to show here Fiora instead. And her best in slot would be having a Bloodthirster. If you don't have this item, same thing like Nyla, they're not really a character. You need Bloodthirster no matter what for them. The best 80 melee item overall for this set would be having a Sterix Gauge. And to gain some resistances, Titans is pretty decent overall. The best alternative items is if you can't build Titans, you can also build Edge and Knight. They're kind of the same thing overall. If you can't build a Sterix Gauge, you can also build a Last Whisper or even a Giant Slayer. It's fine. As long as you have a Bloodthirster, you can just build around these. But I would not recommend an Edge and Knight with Titans at the same time because they don't really stack well together. Her best Ornn artifact item is, this is just for Fiora, not Nyla by the way, Silver Mirror. This item is actually very powerful for her because this item gives you percent AD, meaning that her ability would almost one-shot anyone with this item. The con is, you're not going to have any attack speed, so Fiora attacks less, but who cares when her ability just one-shots. And then the best secondary or an artifact item you can always pick up for almost any melee 80 unit, even for Nyla, would be Infinity Force. And Mittens overall is same thing like Infinity Force, it's just good for melee frontline units. That's 80. Another good secondary carry overall would be Gwen. If you do not have any items on her, Thief Plus is even okay on her. And the good thing about her is she got buffed this patch, so meaning that she's actually really powerful right now. Her best in slot in general would be having a blue buff. Once you put blue buff on Gwen, she turns to a completely different unit. And Gunblade is a very powerful item on her because it gives her some decent damage and she heals herself and the board. And then her best damage item overall would be having a Death Cap. The best alternative items you could build on Gwen would be having like a Hodge for healing, Jewel Gauntlet for like damage, or if you don't have a magic resist shred item on the board, having an Onyx Spark is pretty decent on Gwen as well. But if you already have Onyx Spark on Katarina, then don't put Onyx Spark on Gwen as well because you only need one shred item on the board. Her best Ornn artifact, same thing like Katarina, Zonia's is actually really powerful for like almost any AP unit overall right now in this set. Infinity Force is actually pretty good on Gwen, even though she's an AP unit, it still works on her pretty well. Speaking of AP, DFG is pretty good overall for almost any AP unit, so this item works well with her too. I wouldn't really say Seeker's Arm Guard is that good on Gwen compared to having it on Kat, because Gwen takes time to kill people compared to Katarina, she just kills people instantly. For support items, almost any of them are good, but I would recommend these down here that you see for this con specifically, and on top of that is actually good for meta overall. For utility items, meaning like something to empower your board more, having Static Shiv would help a lot if you don't have Onyx Spark already. If you have Onyx Sparks on the board, there's no need for Static Shiv, but I would prefer having a Static Shiv over Onyx Spark. For emblems, if you were to choose, having Warrior emblems is actually really good because you can play up to 6 warriors if you want to, or you can play up to 4 warriors and just drop one of the warriors. Preserver is actually really good for warrior comp in general because you play it with warriors on top of that. And this is the case for if you have a fairy emblem, you could just play full vertical fairy Katarina, and that is also a really good win con. If you like this type of content and want to support me, consider hitting that sub and like button so we can keep this channel going. Now back to the video. For the units you want to play on the board at level 4, I would recommend having a fairy with Bastion. So you have Seraphine as the backline carry that holds Katarina items, and you have Lilia and Poppy as your tanks. And one of these units can hold on to the Fiora items. I would say Poppy would be the best Fiora item holder. If you have Onyx Spark and stuff, you can just throw it on Lilia instead. And Zoe makes a really good like +1 unit at level 4 because you also get Witchcraft, which debuffs the board, so it makes Seraphine one-shot them. For your first item slam, I would recommend for Rage unit, which would be the Seraphine for this case, is to have either Static Shiv, Jewel Gauntlet, or even Death Cap. The reason why Static Shift is very good early game is because you're reducing magic resist that they don't really have, and you just one-shot them with it. For melee units, for example, like Poppy or Lilia, Onyx Buck really, really good. But if you already have Static Shift and don't build them, just build one or the other. Bloodthirster is really good for frontline units overall because it gives you sustain and gives you AP, and good tank items to win streak would be like Sunfire or Warmongs. Most of you might be wondering, why not just play Zoe as the main carry? The reason why is because Seraphine gets a free item on top of that already because she's a fairy unit, so she gets the fairy crown. And also another reason is when you hit level 5, you throw out 3 mages instead. So Seraphine could just keep amplifying her damage and just one-shot everything on the board. So you drop Zoe at 5, so it takes away the witchcraft, so you can have 3 mages instead, but when you hit level 6, you throw her back in, or you can have some sort of other witchcraft unit, or any other powerful unit you can throw in at level 6, so you can keep winning rounds. If you have an early Katarina drop, you could just play 2 Bastions with Katarina and just build off that, with like either 4 fairy, or like having 2 warriors, and just other strong units. Once you hit level 7, if you have a lot of Nylas, you can play for a Nyla 3 direction with the Katarina 3 direction, and this board overall really synergizes really well together because you have 2 Bastions to get more armor and magic resist with Hecarim and Shen, and Hecarim is also multi-striker with Akali and Kalista. Kalista is also a fairy with Katarina, so you get that fairy item, and you have 4 warriors on the board with Akali, Nyla, Fiora, and Katarina. I would say to play this board first if you never played Katarina before because this is the easier route, and you can just stay at 7 and 3-star most of these units, and then once you 3-star Katarina and then Nyla, you just hit level 8 and throw out an Arcana and just throw the Arcana selector on Hecarim, so it makes your units even stronger. This is the more cap version, and to play this board fully, you have to hit level 8 for it. This is a completely different comp from the last one from level 7. This is if you want to play the cap version of Katarina, which is the Nasus route with Katarina. The reason why this is the more cap version is because you get like really powerful units on the board, and Katarina could just do her thing and just one-shot everything. So the main units you mainly want to play would be like Katarina with Fiora, Gwen, and Akali. The reason why Akali over Nyla is because she gives synergies such as Pyro with Nasus, and Pyro is very powerful because you get a lot of attack speed on the board. And you can make either Nasus or Rakan as your main tank. Whichever one you 2-star, just throw tank items on them, either one works. And for a +1 unit, Shapeshifter with Nasus, Nico is really good because you also get Witchcraft with Fiora. And Bard is a good static shift item holder because he's a backline unit, and he's also a Sugarcraft with Gwen. And Rakan gives Katarina her fairy item. If you have a fairy spat, you can drop the last level 8 board and you can play for full vertical fairy instead. And the play this board is basically all the fairy units that you see here, which would be Kalista, Milio, Lilia, Rakan, Katarina. And when you play 6 fairy, you get the tank version of the fairy item. Just throw it on Rakan because he'll be the best tank item holder for this. The person you want to spat item hold will be Hecarim because Hecarim also gives Bastion with Lilia, and he also gives multi-striker with Kalista. And speaking of Kalista, again, if you don't put Rage Bait on her, she's not a unit. And the glue that pieces them together with Kalista and Katarina would be to have Akali, because Akali is also a warrior with multi-striker. And then to give extra synergies on the board, having a Bard because he also gets Preserver with Rakan, and he also gets Scholar with Milio. If you don't care for the multi-striker route, you can play for Gwen instead to have a better carry, but Kalista should still have a Rage Blade. For the best augments you can choose from, Find Your Center is a very good one because it makes Katarina one-shot everything, but the con is you can only put Katarina in one spot. So a good augment overall because it has a high win rate since your Katarina will just destroy everything. Warrior Crest is very good for this comp overall because you can play either 6 warrior or just turn someone else into a warrior and play 4. Hero Grab Bag is very good to finish off Katarina to make her 3-star, and Pandora's Bench is good to 3-star things a lot easier, but it is kind of random. I personally don't like taking this augment, but if you like to take it, just go for it. Roll Rejuvenation is very good for this comp overall because you're frontlining everything, so all of them will get Omnivamp. Keepers is very strong for frontline comps overall because you get a lot of shields with this, and since you're building a lot of different items, and since on top of that, it's a meta augment, Item Collector is very good overall. Speaking of items, Unleash the Beast is very good for Fiora or Nyla, and this is a very powerful like warrior augment overall, but it doesn't really work on Katarina. It works for the other units. Big Item Grab Bag, you can't go wrong with. It's just a good meta augment. Portable Forge, same thing with Big Grab Bag. You can't go wrong with it. Pandora's Bench is good for a first augment, but if you want to take it as a second and third augment, I wouldn't really recommend doing that unless you really need to. If you don't have the items to BIS Katarina. Freaky Friday is just good for warrior comp overall because you get 2 Infinity Forces. Immovable Object is just very powerful meta augment. Speaking of meta augment, even Support Golem is also one of them. Most of you might be wondering, how do you make a lot of money to hit level 7 and 3-star everything? Well, this is the playstyle I do, which is called tempoing. And what tempo is basically you try to level as fast as you can and try to make as much econ as you can and save as much HP as you can so you can actually win the game that way. So how you do this is when you hit stage 2-1, you hit level 4. So you can start a strong win streak by doing this. Once you hit stage 2-3, always make 10 gold no matter what. If you don't make 10 gold, you're gonna be poor for the rest of the game. But if for whatever reason you have more than 14 gold, then pre-level to 5, which would look like this, which is 8 out of 10 XP at level 4, because once you hit stage 2-4, you hit level 5. But if you did not pre-level, then hit level 5 no matter what at stage 2-4. The reason why I like to pre-level at stage 2-3 is because you have level 5 shops after Carousel, so you can have more powerful units to look at, or you have a chance to get a 4-cost unit because it's 2% chance to hit a 4-cost unit at level 5. At stage 2-6, always make 20 gold, or if for whatever reason you have a lot more gold, you can try to make 30 gold. Essentially, always try to make around intervals of 10 at stage 2-6. Once you hit stage 3-2, hit level 6, which is around the second augment time. At stage 3-7, which is basically wolves, hit level 7. If you are super rich, you can hit level 7 right after carousel in stage 3, and then roll down for Katarina 2 and all that stuff. And that is it for my Katarina reroll guide. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comment section down below. I'll try to answer to my best of my capabilities as I can. Until then, I'll see you guys later.